haga años. I'm 63. I've been following you in my book, Crooked.
Protests continue in Colombia after 20 days of nationwide mobilization. South Africa started its mass vaccination drive with the goal of inoculating nearly 5 million citizens aged 60 and above by the end of June. Israeli airstrikes in Gaza overnight killed more than 2,000 people, the single deadliest attack of the current hostilities. Hello, welcome to From the South. I am Janet Perez Moya from the TeleSUR studios in La Habana, Cuba. We begin with the news, so stay with us. Protests continue in Colombia after 20 days of nationwide mobilizations. This Monday, the National Strike Committee and the government resumed talks to evaluate a list of demands from demonstrators. A central and preliminary demand are the guarantees for the population to exercise their right to protest without being subject to repression by state security forces. The meeting between protest organizers and the government delegation has been ongoing for several hours, and statements from both sides are expected on its conclusion. Prior to meeting, the government representative to the talks, High Commissioner for Peace Miguel Ceballos, said that among the main proposals for the strike committee is to convene the National Roundtable to the evaluation of guarantees for public demonstrations as stipulated in the Constitution. At a meeting on Sunday, the committee presents the points to be addressed by the government in order to negotiate, stating that the process should be accompanied by the United Nations and the Office to the High Commissioner for Human Rights and the Episcopal Conference. In Colombia, protests continue against the government of Iván Duque. Last night, security forces attacked peaceful protesters in Jumbo, Valle del Cauca with helicopters and vehicles, firing tear gas and projectiles close to homes. A cordial relationship between the local strike committee and the mayor of Jumbo has prevailed. This Monday morning, a meeting has been arranged to start talks between both parties. Unknown people, not members of the social movement, tried to set a fire to a police station, leading to the violent response of the security forces. Neighborhood movements also mobilized to safeguard the peace, but they were attacked by the anti-riot squad, who arrested 2 people. The police attack with a helicopter used to shoot at the neighbors in the area left a large number of wounded who are being treated by the medical assistance teams in a temporary health center.
Breathe, breathe. They threw the bombs against the door of the house. That's the way they are. Mom is coming. Where's Mom? Here comes the mother. Look, there's the mother. Look what they are doing here, Mr. Mayor of Jumbo. Look at the people. The child is here. The child is fine.
Reports of abuse of authority and police violence continue to mount in Colombia. From La Estancia in Jumbo, a member of the Permanent Human Rights Committee claims that the anti-riot squadron has fired tear gas at homes in an attempt to weaken the legitimate rights to protest against the government of Iván Duque.
Today I make this complaint. The anti-riot squadron, this criminal government, attacked its own people, throwing tear gas here in La Estancia against people's home, where there are children and the elderly. I make this complaint today, May 17th, at 3:06 a.m. I make this international complaint so that the international media comes to this place.
In an exclusive interview with TeleSUR, the Executive Secretary of the Bolivarian Alliance for the People of Our America, Sasha Llorenti, highlighted that the police violence in Colombia does nothing to address the structural causes of the deep inequality and injustice that the country is experiencing.
Alba TCP own statement cites the use of violence does not resolve the structural causes of social injustice. This condemnation has come within the framework of the principle and purpose of the United Nations Charter, in which international laws note the duty of the states to respect human rights. But in the face of this statement, it has come to our attention that once again this war script has been deployed to try to blame causes other than the structural causes for the situation in Colombia.
In addressing the ongoing Israeli aggression against Palestinians in Gaza and the occupied territories, Llorente said it will increase both illegal colonization of Palestinian lands and ethnic cleansing.
Here the main responsible is not just Israel, but the complicity of the United States government in the situation of Palestine. One thing that is important to emphasize is we cannot speak of an Israel conflict with Palestine. There is no conflict, there is no war, there is no policy of self-defense by Israel. What is there is a systematic application of colonization practice, the expulsion of Palestinians from their own territories, and their systematic and widespread violation of international law.
In Chile, there is a change. This is shown by the results of the mega elections held this weekend. The mobilizations started by the Chilean youths and students brutally attacked by the government of President Sebastián Piñera provoked the change in the electoral ballot boxes. And this Monday, Chile is a different country. The election results give a clear victory to the force of change led by the left and the independents. The big losers have been the parties of the right-wing coalition and the Social Democrats. The Vamos por Chile list, the broad coalition of the right and extreme right, will not achieve the objective for which the entire right-wing spectrum was grouped. The 21% of representation, it is the most voted list, but it will be far from being able to influence the new constitutional articles. The result of the constituent vote, the result of the massive social mobilization to the end of 2019, leaves the new Magna Carta in the hands of the independent and left-wing list. The left-wing lists Apruebo Dignidad and Lista del Pueblo would collect 18% and 15% of their representation, while the center-left groupings Lista del Apruebo and Independientes No Neutrales will reach 14% and 7% in each case. The representative will have until June 2022 to deliberate on the text, which will then be voted on by Chilean citizens. The candidate for the Mapuche people, Francisca Lincoln, now made a call to all constituents to work together in the drafting of a new constitution and also thanks the people for their support. Francisca will be part of the constituents that will make a new constitution for Chile.
I call on all the constituents because as a candidate I won with many votes. And I say to you that we should work together to move forward and to draft the new constitution. And I greet you all and thank you for everything. We will be seeing each other.
In the city of Santiago, Chile's capital, Communist Party candidate Iracy Jacob is confirmed to be the next mayor, a historic achievement of the Communist Party that won against conservative Felipe Alessandri. With almost all the votes counted, economist and councilwoman for Santiago since 2017 leads with more than 3 points ahead of Felipe Alessandri. The electoral body tallies confirmed that the candidate of the Communist Party has more than 31,000 votes compared to 28,000 for the now former mayor. The newly elected mayor assured that this Sunday's result are a historic opportunity to transform the city and to achieve a dignified life with welfare. Ecuador's Public Prosecutor's Office issued an immediate arrest warrant against ombudsman Freddy Carrion under charge of sexual abuse. According to reports from the Public Prosecutor's Office, the events occurred during a meeting at the home of Mauro Falconi, former Minister of Health in the government of outgoing President Lenín Moreno, with the ombudsman and 2 other people belonging to Carrion's security teams. Carrion allegedly tried to sexually assault the wife of the former Minister Falconi. The confusing situation was generated in a fight between Falconi and Carrion that required the intervention of the police force, and once the proceedings were carried out by the Public Prosecutor's Office, the arrest of the ombudsman was ordered. More news coming up after this break. Stay with us. Welcome back. This Monday, South Africa started its mass vaccination drive with the goal of inoculating nearly 5 million citizens aged 60 and above by the end of June. To start the campaign, shots of the Pfizer vaccine were given to people aged 60 and older living in nursing homes. So far, the country has vaccinated over 478,000 of these medical persons with Johnson & Johnson vaccines, and it plans to give the shots to the remainder of its 1.2 million health workers by the end of this week. Authorities in the country report that several citizens 60 years and older, as well as medical workers, have completed their online registrations to get vaccinated. South Africa now has nearly 1 million doses of the Pfizer vaccine after receiving a delivery of more than 3,100 doses of the vaccine on Sunday night.
Somewhat liberated. We'll see how we go. Having the vaccine now, having a little bit more freedom will be outstanding, and we hope that the rest of the community and country get it as fast as possible.
This Monday in Japan, a new poll showed that more than 80% of Japanese oppose hosting the Olympic this year. The latest survey, carried out less than 10 weeks before the Tokyo Games, came after Japan extended a coronavirus state of emergency as the nation faces a fourth wave of infections. The surge in cases has put pressure on the country's healthcare system, with medical professionals repeatedly warning about shortage. The opinion poll found 43% of the population want the 2020 Games cancelled and 40% wants a further postponement. Only 14% support holding the Olympic this summer as scheduled.
I believe we must not hold the Olympics just for the convenience of the IOC and the Tokyo government. There is no reason, none, for us to have to hold the Games now when infection is spreading through the country, when we are under the state of emergency, and when athletes are suffering in many ways. If authorities put priority on the economy, I want them to lift the restrictions on restaurants and bars. If they prioritize the antivirus measures, I want them to cancel the Olympics. I am here to protest against the Games because their policies are so contradictory.
In India, tens of thousands of people have been evacuated from their homes as a severe cyclone heads toward the northwest state of Gujarat. According to press reports, the powerful cyclone Govt is the biggest to hit western India in 30 years. Heavy rains, intense winds and destructive storm had already affected some states along the country's western coast, causing blackouts, downing trees and resulting in at least 6 deaths. The Indian Meteorological Department report that the storm, which originated in the Arabian Sea, has winds of 155 to 165 kilometers per hour. Due to the severity of the cyclone, authorities in Mumbai closed the airport for several hours and urged people to stay indoors as they transfer COVID patients from 3 field hospitals to safer locations. According to climate expert Roxy Matthew Cole from the Indian Institute of Tropical Meteorology, rapid ocean warming is behind the increase in storm forming in the Arabian Sea off the coast of western India. An example of this is cyclone Govt.
One of the reasons that we are seeing more storms and cyclones in the tropical regions, especially regions like Arabian Sea and all, is because of ocean warming, rapid ocean warming. Storms and cyclones draw their energy from warm ocean waters. And now what is happening? The Arabian Sea temperatures, the ocean surface temperatures are warming rapidly. And that has resulted in this sudden spurt of storms and cyclones forming over the Arabian Sea in the recent decades.
The International Day Against Homophobia, Transphobia and Biphobia is celebrated every year on May 17 to denounce the discrimination suffered by all people with sexual preference different from the conventional ones, such as homosexuals, transsexuals, bisexuals and lesbians around the world. In 2021, the theme chosen for the campaign is Together, Resisting, Supporting, Healing, in a clear reference to the current context of recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic. In the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, established by the United Nations, it is expected to the approval of policies and laws and thus, and once and for all, with discrimination, which has caused so many social problems to all mankind. Every May 17 is a plea for respect, tolerance and peace for non-heteropatriarchal communities and their rights to a full and happy life. More news in a minute. Join us after this. Welcome back. After a week of savage Israeli violence that has killed more than 200 Palestinians, Israel's war crimes show no signs of abating. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Israel will continue striking targets in Gaza. The Israeli regime supported by its allies, and the mass media continues to claim a right to defend itself against the supposed threat of the Palestinian resistance movement, Hamas. According to reports, Hamas has fired some 3,000 rockets toward Israel since the conflict escalated on May 10th, nothing comparable to the military might on the Zionist regime. In just 3 days, Israel killed more Palestinians than Israelis killed by Hamas in 10 years. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken acknowledged that he has not seen any Israeli evidence of Hamas operating in the Gaza office building hit by the airstrike over the weekend.
As you know, I think President Biden and other members of the administration have raised directly our concerns with our Israeli counterparts about the safety and security of journalists operating in Gaza. And we have stressed the need for their protection. Shortly after the strike, we did request additional details regarding the justification for it.
Jordan's Deputy Prime Minister on Sunday called to Israel to stop the aggression on Gaza as international efforts to broker a ceasefire continue.
Israel, as its occupying power, is responsible for the dangerous situation in the Palestinian occupied lands, and all that is caused from violence, killing, destruction, and suffering. Escalation must stop, and stop the aggression of Gaza, and stop all illegitimate Israeli practice that basically created this escalation in Jerusalem and the rest of the Palestinian lands. You must act immediately to keep this and to provide protection for the Palestinian people.
In the context of the violent events in Palestine, citizens of countries such as Poland, Italy and Canada have expressed solidarity and support for the Palestinian cause. Large crowds protest today in Warsaw, Milan and Toronto in solidarity with the Palestinians and in protest against Israeli aggressions in Gaza and Jerusalem. In Warsaw, the citizens also condemned the annexionist plans carried out by Israel in the Palestinian territories of the West Bank, Jerusalem and the Gaza Strip. For its part, the Palestinian ambassador to Poland, Mahmoud Khalifa, said these demonstrations are yet another sign of the international community support for the Palestinian people. The United Nations Security Council met to discuss the conflict in public for the first time. Secretary General Antonio Guterres was the first of nearly 2,000 speakers on the agenda of the meeting, led by the delegation from China.
Norway, Tunisia and China expressed deep concern about the situation in Gaza and the rising number of civilian casualties, and called for an immediate end of hostility, full respect for international law, including international humanitarian law, and the protection of civilians, especially children. We demanded immediate cessation of all acts of violence, provocation, incitement, destruction, and eviction plans.
The most urgent and pressing task at this moment is to cease fire and stop violence. What's equally important is to advance a just settlement of the Palestinian question on the basis of two-state solution.
These are flagrant violations of international humanitarian law, and they must be stopped now. Tunisia believes that hostilities must stop and cross-border to the besieged occupied Palestinian territory must be reopened to allow much needed humanitarian and medical assistance to an extremely vulnerable population which was before the escalation already under dire humanitarian situation because of the blockade and other oppressive measures.
According to a video footage obtained by Palestinian lawyer Leman Nasik, Israeli security forces have also brutally attacked Palestinian women in the Sheikh Harash neighborhood on East Jerusalem. The Palestinian neighborhood has become a flashpoint in the ongoing clashes, and it is one of the main areas where Israeli settlers are trying to evict Palestinian families. Iran has accused Israel of genocide and crimes against humanity against Palestinians during a virtual meeting with the 57 Nations Organization of Islamic Cooperation. The emergency meeting is the first major move among Middle East nations still grappling with how to address the conflict.
The criminal acts of Israel should be recognized as genocide and crimes against humanity by both domestic legislation in our own countries and OIC resolutions. Make no mistake, Israel only understands the language of resistance, and the people of Palestine are fully entitled to their right to defend themselves and to defy the bullying of this racist regime. The massacre of Palestinian children today follows the purported normalization. This criminal and genocidal regime has once again proven that friendly gestures only aggravate its atrocities.
We have come to the end of this news brief. You can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. For TeleSUR English, I am Janet Perez Moya. Thank you for watching.